Reddit. What is your most disturbing, scary, or creepy real story? A few years ago, I was walking through the woods off the beaten track a bit, and I smelled this really overpowering, sweet smell. Being nosy, I pulled back the undergrowth to have a look, and found a dead body. The guy had clearly been there a while and wasn't looking great, all swollen and green and black with various runny bits. The local wildlife had also been dining well for a few days. I called the police, who told me to wait with the body until they arrived. Being in the middle of nowhere, it took a while for them to arrive, and it got dark, and I was just sat there in the dark with him for a long time. It turns out he had committed the self-unalive. For a long time afterwards, I had dreams about him, and he would talk to me about not-so-nice things. Mainly about how he was angry I had disturbed his resting place, and he wanted me to off myself. Probably just my imagination, but all pretty disturbing the same. He still turns up in my dreams from time to time. No doubt will be tonight after typing this. About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side. The real creepy ones you see a lot in movies. Anyway, I had been driving about 45 minutes and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you suddenly become really tired out of nowhere? Well, yeah, that happened to me. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me I wasn't going to find a place to pull up, and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road, onto the grass and behind some bushes, to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past the roads. They weren't empty, and I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22 and then fell asleep. Sometime later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time it really freaked me out because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car, but why would it return almost an hour after I had left the previous time? I looked in my rearview mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now at the time I thought it was the damn hook killer. You know, the one that scratched the couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he went out to investigate? Yeah, screw that, I thought to myself, so I got the heck out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a car parked off to the side of the road, with the driver's side door opened. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was there. There weren't. Then I looked in my rear view mirror. I didn't see anything. And then all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like, "Hey you, get the frick out of your car now." I noped the heck out of there and sped off. I never saw the guy again. Moral of the story? Don't sleep on the side of a deserted road. A few summers ago, I went for a bike ride around midnight with a friend. We went our separate ways at the end of the evening, and I had about 2 blocks to ride back myself. Because of construction, I had to ride on the sidewalk, but the streets were dead. But it wasn't a problem until right where I was about to turn left onto my street. There was this man walking by himself, in his 40s, a little scruffy but not homeless. The sidewalk was narrow, and I didn't want to freak him out. So when I got about 6 feet behind him, I said, "Hey, behind you." And then he turned around and gave me this super angry look. I turned down the street and he started to follow me, literally screaming about how I was a freaking cunt and he was going to off me and all that. I live right around the corner and I didn't want him to figure that out, so I decided to do another loop around the block. And that's not the scary part. The scary part is that when I looped back around and looked down the street, I saw him standing on my front stoop, staring out on the street like the guy knew I lived there. He saw me ride by again, but he didn't say anything. I ended up going back to the friends, but my bike got stolen from the alleyway by my house 2 days later. Edit. The guy in question was definitely not homeless. We have a large population of mentally ill people in that area, unfortunately. We're downtown of a medium-sized city. So if I didn't think the sidewalk was too narrow to pass otherwise, I wouldn't have disturbed him. Half of the scary part was that he looked pretty much completely normal for my area. That being said, I ended up texting my mom, and she made the decision not to notify law enforcement until my bike was stolen. I posted this just a couple days ago on another thread. This isn't very interesting, but I woke up with blood gushing down my cheek when I was younger, and I didn't feel anything, but my face felt wet. So I went down to my parents' room and they freaked out. To this day, we have no clue what cut my face, but I needed 8 stitches next to my eye. We checked the sheets, pillowcases, edge of the bed, so on. We still have no idea. So when I was sleeping in the middle of a dream, a character of my dream, who was doing something, turned her head, looked at me very seriously and said,
"There's someone in your apartment. Wake up."
I nearly had a goddamn heart attack, and my apartment was empty. Or so you think. I had awesome parents who let me sleep in the living room on weekend nights when I was very young, because my sister was a light sleeper and I could stay up until dawn. But of course I always ended up sleeping on the couch because Nick at night made me tired. So one night I wake up to prickly feeling, like an instinct, just bolted into a sitting position and stared out the front window. We lived in rural Georgia, so you can imagine the magnitude of trees. In perfect light, cast from the moon, I see a silhouette of someone in this tree. The family dog dashes to the window and is snarling into the glass. Terrified, I run into my parents' room and try to explain to my parents that there's a strange person outside. Dad grabs something defensive and darts outside with the dogs to beat the wax off the hothead. I tremble in Mama's arms until Dad comes home and says he saw no one and to go to bed. I decide to sleep in my regular bedroom, and I fill my sister in as to what happened. Dad is making regular rounds in the house with a cup of coffee. We're all still, and I finally think I can sleep. Nope, I notice the man outside my window. From what I can see in the moonlight, he gives me a shush signal and runs away. Just turns around to run a straight line away. I swear I couldn't stop crying for what felt like hours. The Sandman, he wants you to sleep. The Sandman tells you shh. When I was a young child, I had the same dream every night for years about drowning when a huge wave swept over me and I sank to the bottom. Years later, I had a temporary job delivering mail one summer during college. I saw this old lady sitting on a front porch waiting for me. When I got there, she looked at me and said in a foreign accent, "You drowned when Oceanus sank beneath the waves." It freaked me the heck out. My house sits farther back in the lot than most other houses. It's a strange layout as well. The sidewalk runs the length of the living room and ends up at the front porch, which lets into the living room. Large windows that do not open allow great lights to get into the living room, but at the cost of no privacy. The rest of my family was on vacation, and having the house to myself, I decided I would get smashed. Well, I passed out on the couch in the living room at about 9 when I realized I was too scared to walk back to my room. The couch is right underneath these big windows. I woke up suddenly, not knowing why. I had a severe case of the chills and I could not figure out why. Then the banging started. It came from right above me. I did not move, but I opened my eyes and looked at the window. Someone was standing there, pounding on the glass. Without moving, I looked at the cable box. It was around 3 in the morning. The banging continues, and then it stops suddenly, but I still did not move. Suddenly, it commences again, coming from 2 different directions now. Someone is banging on the window, and another person is banging on the front door. They kept doing it and would not go away. Finally, after about 40 minutes, they quit. It was the most terrifying event I can recall at the moment. It made me a nervous wreck after that. I called a friend the next day to see if he would come over and stay the rest of the week, and his response was, "What the frick for? So that we can both be murdered in our sleep? Thanks a lot, asshole." I was 17 and had just gotten my license. Back in high school, my friends and I made it a mission to find abandoned houses to throw parties in. We had a few good candidates, but the motherlode was this house I would pass on my home from work. It was an undeveloped shell of a huge home with a large property in the back. I had told one of my friends about it, and one day, before we went to see a movie, I took him to the house. It was about dusk in the summer, so I had my headlights on. I pulled into the front of the house, and we were there for like 10 seconds tops, before we pulled back to go to the main road. A minute later, this big truck pulls up behind us with its high beams on, and is riding our butt. My friends and I took note of it, but paid it no mind as we headed back to the main row. At the light, I turned right, but the truck cut through the gas station at the corner and blocked us off. Out of this truck comes this big hulk of a man, and my friend and I are pooping our pants. He raps on the window and I roll it down. Now the really freaky part is that this is a busy road, and now that there is no one in sight. He asks us what we were doing at that house, and I quickly lied and said we were making a U-turn. He stares at us for a few seconds, smiles, and sends us on our way. To this day, the house remains unfinished, and I'm convinced it's a drug operation of some sort. TLDR, don't go into abandoned houses, man. When I was about 10, all of my cousins and siblings were over. Just the 10 of us there. The parents and grandparents were out for an adult dinner. So it was just us, the kids, sitting around watching a few movies. When all of a sudden the house shook and there was a large flash coming from the backyard. It felt as if a bomb had dropped. We all heard, felt, and saw it. And as a pack, we ran into the hallway. The eldest cousins in the group debated on calling the police, but opted to call the parents. After a few minutes, we gained the courage and ventured out into the living room again, this time with weapons, just in case. After a half hour with no other issues, the parents came home and thought we were insane. There was nothing wrong with the backyard and no neighbors reported anything. It's been 10 years and we still talk about it, trying to figure out what it was. That has been the scariest thing that had happened to me by far. That's the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoy these scary stories. Let's start a new thing off. The question of the day, so to speak. We'll start with, what did you do to take care of yourself today? Did you hydrate? Did you have a snack you thought was especially yummy? Tell me what you did for self-care. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. And without further ado, I will see you all in the next video. Hasta la pasta.